Okay, we are going to get started here. Welcome everybody to today's event on Dynamics NAV's 2017 in-Office 365 experience. I'm really glad that we're able to line this event up. I think it's some of the most interesting and exciting elements of the NAV 27 release, and I'm really glad to have our two presenters here today. Errol Shanefish and Jared Hall of Microsoft will be presenting for us. As we get started, please do know that you can ask questions today. I know Errol and Jared will be making time at the end to take your questions. You should see the place to do that just to the right of the main presentation area. Enter those at any time. And we're also recording today's event. I also just want to note, for anyone who's been to another one of our events in the past, you might notice we're using a different webcasting platform today. We're testing it out, and we'll have a quick survey at the end to get your feedback. So please be on the lookout. Let us know what your experience is afterwards. So without any further delay, let's get things started. I'm going to open things up for Errol to start things off. So Errol, welcome.
Thank you, Jason, and thank all of you for getting together on the phone here during this, what I'm sure is a busy holiday season for everyone. I know it is for us here at Microsoft. But I just wanted to kind of set the stage for this session. The expert in the room is definitely Jared, and we're so excited to have Jared do the presentation. But I did want to kind of set up for everybody just a reminder on sort of everything that happened with Dynamics NAV 2017 and kind of the three primary areas that we concentrated on for that release. So Jared, if you want to go to the next slide for me. And I'm sure many of you were at Directions, and even to a certain respect, we sort of presented some of this information at WPC prior to Directions, and have sort of continued to bring the message of Dynamics NAV 2017 and the amazing release that was that. And so just as a reminder, kind of the three core things that we concentrated on for that release. You'll see obviously the bulk of the in-Office 365 experience, along with our continued investment. I'm going to go sort of left side, right side, in the things that surround Dynamics NAV 2017 and the opportunities for you as a partner to expand your consulting practices around some of the other Microsoft-centric applications, including Power BI and things like Power Apps, Microsoft Flow, and to a certain respect, even Cortana Intelligence and Cortana Analytics. As is seen by the ability to extend Microsoft Dynamics NAV 2017 to an even greater extent than we have in the past, and to do so in a way that truly makes sense for your customers so that they aren't bogged down in the upgrade process as they go forward. And so it was really important for us to have this story around the in-Office 365 experience that brings together the two worlds of business process and productivity. That was of utmost importance in this release, along with allowing you to extend the solution and have additional service revenues. At the same time, we obviously continue to enhance the core application, and that is primarily driven by suggestions from you, our partners, and from our customers. Sort of the features, the individual features that happen inside of the core application is largely driven, since this is such a a solution that's been around, that's a solid solution. It's important that we get that feedback from our partners and customers. And so really, as that kind of the setting the stage for the in-Office 365 experience, I'd really like to hand it off to Jared and get into the meat of this this session right now. So Jared, I'm going to hand it over to you, buddy.
All right, thanks, Errol. So for this session, as Errol mentioned, we're talking about our taking some NAV functionality and embedding that into the Office experience. One of our priorities was realizing, as we were talking to customers and partners about their experiences and their day-to-day activities, we realized a lot of people in their business day-to-day activities spend a lot of time in Office. Email and Outlooks, working with Excel spreadsheets, playing in Word, all that Office functionality consumes a lot of your time. So our goal for this release was to take some of that financial functionality that you have in Dynamics NAV and put that into the context of your experience in Office. And so we're going to show what that looks like throughout this session. Three main areas that we're going to talk about. I want to talk about Outlook. We've embedded some financial functionality into your mail and calendar experience. Next, we're going to look at Bookings. Bookings is it's actually a new application from the Office team that they just recently released. We'll take a quick look at that, a quick overview of what that functionality does and how we're planning on synchronizing with that and making that a smoother experience for business users, making sure that the activities you do in Bookings will flow into your financial system. And then third, Excel. That's always a favorite for your accountants and other financial users. Excel is a really powerful tool, and we're going to look at some of the work that we've done with that. And as Jason mentioned, we're going to make sure we have time at the end for Q&A. So make sure you're typing questions throughout. Don't know that I won't be able to look at questions while we're going through the session, but we'll make sure there's time at the end to answer those questions at the end of the session. So let's start with Outlook. Our Outlook add-in is, our goal here was being able to take financial functionality from Dynamics NAV and surface that within your email message. So you're working with your customers, you're working with your vendors, you're working with prospects, and there's data related to that in Dynamics NAV. And in the past, you would have had to switch back and forth between those two applications, and we wanted to take some of those actions that you would typically have to switch over to Dynamics NAV to perform and just surface those directly in your Outlook mail. So, for example, we've added some dashboards, as we just saw on the screenshot, for customers, vendors, and contacts. We have the ability to send and receive documents, and also have quick links to documents. On the calendar side, we'll look at our customer dashboard again, being able to send documents and also enter time for jobs. One of our work efforts for NAV 2017 was to do some simplification in the jobs module, and part of that was being able to automatically move some information from your jobs into your Outlook calendar. So we'll look at that and see how that works. Let's start in Outlook. So the first scenario I want to look at is the experience that you would have in receiving an email from somebody who wants to do business with you, a prospect, somebody who you haven't done business with in the past, but this person now wants to start a relationship, wants to get a quote, wants to start working with you. So this email is from somebody. In my business, I work for a landscaping company in this demo, and this person wants to see what it would take for me to do some landscaping services for them. From this experience, we have this Contact Insights button up in the top that we've added that opens a Dynamics NAV add-in and surfaces financial functionality right here within Outlook. What we're doing in determining which page to open is looking at the email address of this contact as a unique identifier. We look at this email address, we recognize that this is not somebody that we have already in our financial system, and says, do you want to add this person as a new contact? Yes, I do. I want to add Andy Teal as a new contact. I see this person works for Cronus US Inc., and so I can add this person as a new company as well. I'll add this company to my system. I can add any of the additional information that I need to fill out, but for now, that should be enough. And now I have my new contact. Because I don't have any information yet associated with this person, it's going to be a pretty straightforward dashboard, not a lot of information, but I can start working with Andy to get Outlook disappeared on me. Well, we'll start that over. We'll go back and find Andy. All right, there we go. And we'll reopen our contact insights, and he's now been added as a contact, so I have that information there. We can now, from this view, start creating interactions with Andy. So we can see what's Andy looking for, what does he want, and we can start tracking that interactions within Dynamics NAV. So let's create a new interaction. And this is kind of our light CRM scenario. In Dynamics NAV, we have light CRM functionality for tracking interactions with your prospects. It's not our full-blown Microsoft Dynamics CRM functionality, but it does give you the ability to track some of those interactions with your contacts. So let's say I have this interaction with Andy Teal. I want this tracked in my system, and I say, great. Yes, I want to do business with you, and also we have a golf event coming up. I have a template for that letter that I've already sent out to some of my other prospects and customers. I can add that in. It recognizes that I am the salesperson associated with this, and I can then type a message.
Golf event, and we're sitting here in Fargo, and last week it was 22 below zero, so that sounds pretty good, Jared.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great? So we have interaction details listed out. I can add anything else that I need, but because this correspondence type is email, we know that we can send this back to Andy using email. So as soon as I hit that, it asks me if I also want to create an opportunity that will track it in Dynamics NAV. We open a reply message to Andy Teal and populate it with our template information. It has our message that we typed in, including my spelling mistake, and I can then send that off to Andy Teal. Once I send that to Andy, I can also go back into Dynamics NAV. All my icons on the far right of my screen are hidden by the WebEx controls, so I need to resize that. Apologize for that. But let's go look at our contacts and see how that shows up in NAV. Let's look up Andy Teal, who we just added, and from here we can go look at our interaction log entries. This is that interaction that I just created, so any other salesperson can then come in and look at this and see all the detail of the communications that have happened with Andy. And I can also show the attachment associated with that, which is the message that I just sent to Andy. So all of that is tracked and allows me to maintain that relationship with Andy. And then once he's added as a customer, I can start doing additional functionality. In fact, let's go look at some of the additional functionality that we would have with someone who is already a customer. Let's go look at Jim Glynn. Jim Glynn is somebody who I've worked with in the past. He already has a customer record in Dynamics NAV, and he is sending me a request for a quote. He wants to know what it would cost to have a few shrubs added on his at the Coho Winery. I can open my contact insights, and because I've already done business with Jim, I can see a dashboard of the information associated with the Coho Winery. If he had had a balance, we'd have some information here, and we'd have our age receivables chart. We'd have our sell-to customer history, and I can drill down on any of this information to see what has happened in the past. So I have all the detail associated with this customer right at my fingertips. So I have the history and understanding of what I've already done, so I can know what to do in the future with this customer. From that dashboard, I can then start creating documents. Andy is requesting an invoice, so I'm going to say, or a quote rather, I'll say new sales quote. And I can enter the information that he's requesting. He's requesting 2 or 7 shrubs. And another thing that we recognized here is that within this space, this Outlook add-in provides a defined space here. And in Dynamics NAV, some of these documents can get fairly complex. In the desktop Outlook, we have the ability to resize this, so we have a larger table and ability to make this a little bit easier. But for those longer documents, we recognized that you may need a little bit more space. So we added this pop-out action. And when I hit pop-out, what that does is it takes the context of that add-in and pops it out into a separate browser window, including all the information that I've been working on. So I can then take that to full screen, add the additional information that I wanted to, and once this is all filled out with all the information that I want to have, I can close that window, refresh the add-in, and all that information gets pushed in, reloaded back into the add-in. And I'm back in that Office experience right there. From here, I can then send this by email back to Jim. I've created my document, and when I hit that send by email, what we're doing is taking templates that are built into Dynamics NAV, fully customizable. We have a template for both the body of the email as well as the document itself. So we've inserted as a reply message into this email message the template for the body, and when I open the attachment, I see that it's now template for the quote, including everything that I've added here, and I can send that off to Jim, and really quickly and easily without having to jump over to Dynamics NAV, I've sent him a quote that he's requested. While we're, just a couple things to note. This add-in experience that we have here, this is surfacing a page from the Dynamics NAV web client. So we're going and looking for that web client, pulling that out, so that all of this data is going automatically straight into our Dynamics NAV database. It also gives you the ability to customize this. So if partners have, if you have a partner that's modified this page for some reason, added an additional field, that will show up within the add-in and give you the ability to have that functionality added within the add-in. One other thing to note is that we've, so far I've been showing reply messages, so I receive an email from somebody and send a reply, and we do that as a reply form. We also have the ability to do this from a new message. So if I were to oh, I got that email address wrong. Actually, if I get the email address wrong, or don't know the email address, another thing that we'll do is recognize that there is no email address and give you the ability to select one. So I'm going to select Jim Glynn as my contact from the add-in, and from here I can then start creating quotes, documents, and we'd have that same experience where it generates from the template and attaches it to this message, and I can then send that off from a compose message instead of as a reply form. Let's quickly jump over, and just as a note, this is built in using some of the extensibility functionality of Outlook. And wanted to note a couple of the differences between desktop Outlook and Outlook web app, your OA experience. So let's jump over quickly to Mail Online and select Jim Glynn. From here, the add-in experience is a little bit different. Instead of having it open up as a pane on the right side, the Dynamics NAV add-in shows up as a horizontal view within the pane. Should have opened as a horizontal view within the pane. I'll have to look at my certificates. But in any case, the experience is slightly different when you open this up within Dynamics NAV, open it up from the Outlook web app. And I just wanted to call out the difference there between those two experiences. Let's jump back to desktop Outlook and look at a vendor. We have functionality that we can also do from a vendor experience. So let's say I receive an invoice from Wide World Importers. They're a vendor of mine. I've purchased some lamps and chairs from them, and now they've sent me as an email an invoice. When we open the add-in recognizes Wide World Importers as a vendor of mine. We pull up the dashboard, we see all of our history with them, we see all their information, and we pull up a different dashboard, the vendor dashboard, because we recognize this contact as a vendor. I have that same ability to drill in on any of these to see the detail, including the chart. But I want to create a new invoice and have that posted into Dynamics NAV. So from here, I could say, I could create a new purchase invoice, fill in the detail straight from here, and then post that similarly to how I did with the sales quote. Another piece that we have is we've worked with our OCR functionality. So one of the new features in Dynamics NAV 2016 was the ability to send a document to an OCR service, have that saved in Dynamics NAV as an incoming document, have the OCR service, which is optical character recognition, scan through that document, recognize the data from that field, and send the data as a formatted XML document that NAV understands back into the system, so we can automatically post an invoice from a PDF without having to enter any manual data. So if we look at this document, I have an invoice from Wide World Importers. It's attached as a PDF to this document, or to this email message. From the dashboard, if I have my OCR functionality set up, I have this incoming documents, send to OCR action available to me. And I can say, send it to OCR. What that's doing is looking for the list of all the attachments that are attached to this email message. I only have one, but if there were multiple, I'd have a list here, and I could select which ones I want to send to OCR or just send to my incoming documents. When I click OK, it tells me it's successfully sent. And I can then go into Dynamics NAV and look at my incoming documents and see where that showed up. So this is the one I had already sent it earlier today as just making sure it worked, and now it worked again. I've sent this document and it's been sent to the OCR service. What that's going to do is the service that I have set up, it's going to process that document, read through it, figure it out, and process the data and send that back into Dynamics NAV as a formatted document. And there are full sessions that are just on this OCR functionality, so I won't go through all the details. It also takes about 5 minutes to process that document, so we won't wait for it. But when that does come back, we would have the ability to just post that document as it's understood from our own OCR service. So it's saving a lot of steps in downloading documents or manually reading any data, manually typing that in. It's all automated straight from my email message.
Hey, Jared, just a quick question that came in.
Yep.
When you are exposing the Outlook add-in in your in Outlook, so for instance, when you just do the contact insights, what page is used for that within NAV?
It's using your contact, well, either the contact card, the vendor card, or the customer card. So basically what we've done here is we've taken the fact boxes to the right side of your contact card in Dynamics NAV and stylized them to surface this information as a dashboard in the add-in. So any of those fields, and that's the dashboard view. If you want the details, we've also added the details here, and this is showing all of the details from that card. There is there's a new page that when you first open the add-in, it's the Office add-in. I don't remember the actual name of the page, but it's the one that's called first and does all the calculations to determine what page do we actually show to the user. And there's a few other error conditions that we trap on that page, so other scenarios that we'd walk through. But these are the actual pages from Dynamics NAV. So it'd be your contact, customer, and vendor cards.
Gotcha. And then when you are working on a document, it would be the document page.
Yes.
Another question, what about new items when OCR document arrives? So if I assume that means on the invoice if there's not an item that's currently in your inventory.
An item that's in the system? Yeah, so that would be something that the OCR functionality would do, is that, and actually I'm not, there's another program manager who designed the OCR functionality, so he could give you all the detail, but when that comes back, it comes back as text, and you can map that to an item, and gives you the ability to create a new item as needed.
Okay, great.
So if you need more detail on that, you can send me an email, and I can try to find more additional information on the OCR functionality.
Okay, thanks.
All right, let's look at Calendar, because Calendar gives a similar functionality. Actually, before we jump to Calendar, let's look at the document links functionality. So another thing we've done is we've wanted to make it easier for you to get access to documents that are referenced within the body of an email. So in this example that we see on the screen, Peter, he's my sales manager. He emails me and says he's working with somebody who wants to quickly modify a quote that's sent out, and he references that within the body of the email. So what we've done with this add-in is, if you have a document number referenced in the body of the email, then the document links add-in will display here above the email message. And what that will do is it searches through the body of the email for a document number and looks for that in Dynamics NAV and pulls up that document. So without having to go into NAV and do any kind of search, I have that right at my fingertips with one click. I can then make the change. So for here, he is requested a change to the discount. I can look for that field, make that change to the discount, and then I have the same functionality that I would have had that I had in the other add-in to send it by email, make an order, invoice. The primary actions that you would take against this document are all right here, and I can send that off to Peter and Helen as a reply message. Another area where this is really cool is with workflow. In Dynamics NAV 2016, we've added some workflow functionality that adds checks and balances to your document workflows. So one of the more popular scenarios of using the workflow system, and there are many, I won't go into detail of all the workflow functionality, but it gives you the ability to do approvals. So one example is if I want to do a purchase invoice approval, you can set up approval chains that when a document is entered, when a purchase invoice is entered, you submit it for approval, and it won't allow you to post it or release it until it's gone through the approval process and the appropriate people within the approval chain have clicked approve. So I've set up a purchase invoice approval workflow. And I've submitted this document to workflow. So if I try to post this, it'll give me a message that says you can't post this because there's a restriction by this workflow and it needs to be approved before it's going to let you post it. One of the nice things about the system is that it sends email notifications out to the approvers to let them know that there's a document waiting their approval. So I've submitted that for approval, and I've received this email from my Dynamics workflow. And the document number is referenced within the body of the email. And this is a link that would open up the web client to go to that document, but I can also use the document links add-in to go straight to it from within the body of my email. We recognize purchase invoice 107210. We go find that document, and from my email message, I can review all the details of that document to know whether or not it should be approved. And then from here, because it recognizes me from my user ID that I'm logging into the system as the approver, it lets me approve that document. I can then go back into purchase invoice, post this, and it says it's been posted. And I can then pull up the posted document. So it's a nice, quick, easy way to, as an approver who doesn't want to always be logging into the system, have that access right from within the context of my email. Now let's jump over to Calendar. We've also added this functionality to calendar meeting or calendar appointments, and this is geared more towards the goal of this functionality is geared more towards service-based industry. So I'm a small business that schedules my appointments with my customers on my calendar, and afterwards I want to be able to see who I've performed a service with, how long it took me, and then invoice them straight from that calendar because that's where I have everything organized. So I'm just going to add a calendar appointment here. Let's say landscaping for Coho. I could add, and if I added any of my customers as attendees on this appointment, it would the add-in would automatically recognize those customers and pull up that customer card. If I don't want to add my customers as attendees, when I open my Contact Insights, what this will do is bring me to my list, and I can select my customer from there. And it'll pull up the customer dashboard for that customer. And then from there, I have that same ability to create a sales invoice. So after my service is completed, I come in here, I see I spent 2 hours on Monday afternoon or Monday morning with this customer, and then I create a sales invoice for that 2 hours and send that off. Also, related to that calendar functionality, we've also added that jobs functionality. So let's go look at jobs quickly. In my jobs, I've set up a job. This is for Cronus. Cronus is Andy Teal, who emailed me earlier as a new contact. He came to my golf tournament and loved the golf tournament, so he decided to become my customer. So we have a job set up to go work with Andy Teal and Cronus to get their landscaping done. So this is the job that we have. If you're not on NAV 2017 yet, you may notice this is a little bit of a simplified view from what you would have seen previously. That was one of our efforts. But in addition to this, we have all of these tasks on here. We have tasks associated with this job, and we have resources in our company that are going to be performing these tasks. And we wanted a quick, easy way to be able to get these tasks onto the calendar of the individuals who are going to be performing these tasks so that they have the details of what they need to be doing, when they're scheduled for, how long we expect that they're going to take, and other associated information. So let's look at the job planning lines where we set up who the task or who the resource is for each of these tasks, and the date, the amount of time, and all the other details associated with this job. If I'm the manager of this job, the project manager, I have the ability to get these set up, and we've added this button that says Send to Calendar. If we have email addresses set up for and associated with our users and resources, then when I hit Send to Calendar, what that will do is it will send calendar requests to those resources. So it'll show up on Jared's calendar, which would be my calendar. So I'm going to jump to my calendar. Now I'll do this in OWA. Actually, let's look at email first. I've already sent that, so I didn't have to wait for the processing and showing up in the email message. So for the sake of time, these have already been sent. For those 5 lines, I received for each of those tasks, I received a calendar meeting request that'll show up on my calendar. From here, I can select this and say add to calendar. Now when I go over and look at my calendar, I see that I have now all of the tasks lined up, and when I open them, it shows me the detail. I didn't have a lot of detail associated with this customer, but more detail would be displayed as required. But I have where I'm supposed to be, who I'm supposed to be performing a task for, and what the task is. That shows up on my calendar. Another nice thing is that as the person performing this work, I can log into my calendar after that work is done and log my time. So I can open the Dynamics NAV add-in. And when we open the add-in, what this is going to do is give me an error message. You know, Errol, this was working 20 minutes ago.
That's always the case.
The demo gods are against me.
Yeah.
So I'll just have to explain what this would look like. Actually, I think I have a screenshot. There we go. From the screenshot, hopefully you can see that. If this is a job, it will bring up the job tasks associated with that job, and I can log time against this I can enter time against that calendar appointment for the job task, and that'll then be posted into the job journal. I'll have to figure out why it's not giving me the ability from my OA client to log in, but the functionality is there, giving that quick, easy experience for as a job. As a resource, being able to have that added to my calendar and then log the time after that service is completed. Actually, I'm going to close those out. Hopefully, won't have to do anything more with OA today. The next thing I wanted to talk about is bookings. So bookings, actually, we'll come back to. Before we get to bookings, let's talk about add-in deployment, some of the administration. For those of you who would be doing the administration for this functionality, being able to deploy this is pretty quick and easy. We have a wizard that allows individual users to deploy this add-in, and that's done from the assisted setup. If you go into, well, rather than doing slides, I'll just show you within the Dynamics NAV client. Close out the jobs. We'll go to Assisted Setup, and Setup Outlook for Financials is the wizard that you would want to walk through. I've already completed this, so it shows it's completed. When I set this up, I have the option to deploy it for my mailbox or for my organization. An administrator, or an Exchange administrator, would have the ability to deploy this add-in to everyone within your Office 365 tenant. Or Exchange on-prem tenant, depending on which version of Exchange you're using. For mine, I deployed it just to my mailbox. It will ask you for your email and password, and that's used to get access to deploy the add-in. Once you've entered your email and password, you click Finish, and it's deployed. It's done at that point. Another thing to note is that it will only ask you for your email and password if you're logging into Dynamics NAV using Azure Active Directory authentication, then it won't ask you for this message at all. That authentication token will already be used. But if you're using NAV user password or some other authentication method for Dynamics NAV, then it will ask you for your email and password to get permissions to deploy the add-in. So that's a per user experience, or through the wizard. We also added an administration page for administrators. So if I open Office Add-in Management, This lists the two add-ins that we have and gives you the ability to review those. You can deploy them, and these would be deploying the add-ins for the entire company or your entire Office 365 or Exchange on-prem tenant. If you also want to look at the add-in manifest, it gives you the ability to download the manifest, look at it. If you're experienced in modifying manifests, you could modify it and re-upload it. But all of that is done from here within the Office add-in management page. For removing the add-ins, if you're the administrator and want to remove that for the entire tenant, you can do that from the Office add-in management page. Individuals can manage this add-in from their add-in management page in Office 365. So in Outlook, we have our Manage Add-ins. I can open this up, and it will take me to the page where I would manage my add-ins. And these are the two add-ins that have been deployed. So as a user, I can either remove these from here or just turn them off so that they're not displayed. And actually, if an administrator deploys them for the entire tenant, then I, as a user, wouldn't be able to remove them. The administrator would have to remove them, but I can still turn them off so they don't display in my system. So that's our administration experience for adding and removing these add-ins. A few general notes on administration. To be able to deploy these, it requires a web client with an SSL, deployed with SSL. And the reason for that is the page that we're displaying within that add-in is the web client. It's a web client page, and the SSL piece is a requirement of Office for those add-ins. So also our supported authentication modes, either NAV user password, which is mapped to an Exchange identifier, or using Azure Active Directory are supported authentication modes for the Outlook add-in. We also added the ability to sync contacts. So in our first demo, we showed the ability to add a new contact from within the context of an email by opening that Outlook add-in. But if you want your contacts that are saved in your contacts folder in email to automatically sync to your contacts in Dynamics NAV, you can set that up to have that be automatically done. And any changes to contacts in either place, either in Dynamics NAV or Exchange, to have those changes sync back and forth. And we can do that from within Exchange Sync Setup. And I'll show that in a second, but I also want to look at bookings. We also have sync functionality with the Bookings app. This is a new app from Office 365. I think it was first released in June. It's available with Office Business Premium. But it gives you the customers the ability to book appointments with businesses directly online. I've set one up for I've set up a bookings client for my landscaping business, and we'll just take a look at what that looks like. From within bookings, it says welcome to bookings. I have calendar, a bookings page. My customers are all listed. My staff that perform my services are all listed, and the services that I perform are all set up from within my bookings company. The bookings page itself, once I publish this page, I'm given a URL, and this is a page that my customers can go to book appointments with me. So I have my landscaping company. I've published my page. It has my logo, and it lists all the services that I perform. So if I will have a customer, they come out here. They need an initial consult on their full landscaping. I'm then given a calendar on when I'm available to perform those services. If I select tomorrow, and I want it to start at 11 a.m., and then I put in my customer information. Oops. When I book this, I get a confirmation that I've done the booking, and it takes me to my booked page where I can reschedule, cancel, or create a new booking. This also sends an email notification to both the customer and the business saying you have a new booking and notifying them that this booking is completed. I can also go back to my calendar and see that that's been added to my calendar, both in Outlook and for my business calendar in Bookings. When that comes through, we should see this as another appointment on my calendar for the business. And that allows me to add staff to it. If I had more than one person working for the company, I can assign specific individuals to perform that task and add any additional information that's needed there. So what we wanted to do with Dynamics NAV, having this functionality here, we realized that if I'm a business who's performing services, I want these services listed both in my Bookings app and my Dynamics NAV app. And I want those services to sync back and forth so that it enables some of those additional functionalities of after a service is completed, then I can create an invoice, and I already have those items all there. All the pricing information is the same, and everything is accurate. We wanted those services as well as customers between those two to sync up. So as soon as that new appointment was booked, that individual, who was me, that was created as a new customer within my customer list. I want those new customers to also be pushed into Dynamics NAV so I can then start invoicing and quoting those individuals. So we added that as a sync functionality. In Exchange Sync Setup. From here, I need to enter, at this point we have encrypted password as the way that we connect to Exchange, hoping to improve that experience, but it's fully encrypted password functionality that gives us access to move data back and forth between your financial system and Dynamics NAV, or Dynamics NAV and Exchange. Once we validate that, we have our contact sync setup, which gives us the setup page for syncing contacts. So that would be our contacts page syncing into a Dynamics NAV folder in my contacts folder in Outlook. And once I have this set up, I can enable a background sync that would set that up on a job to automatically sync back and forth in the background without me having to do anything manually. We also have that with Bookings. With Bookings, I have set up a Bookings company, Larry Larson Landscaping. That's the company that we were just looking at. I can enable my background sync. And we also have to select templates. So when a customer or an item is pulled in from Bookings, there's a lot more information that we track on that in Dynamics NAV than Bookings tracks. So we can apply some of those additional fields from a template that we have as our default template when that sync happens, so that if we want specific posting groups applied to those customers coming across or other additional information, we can have that automatically applied when that sync happens. Once that's selected and set up, I can sync with Bookings, and those changes will move back and forth between those two systems. All right, so the last thing that I want to talk about is our functionality with Excel. We've made some changes to the Excel add-in. So in previous versions, prior to Dynamics NAV 2017, we had the ability to export data from a page to Excel and work with that data. But it's been a one-way push of data from that list out to Excel. If you have in your Windows client the existing add-in loaded, that gives you refreshable information from Excel. So you can hit a refresh and it goes and gets fresh data, and you have all of that always up to date in Excel. But we wanted to go a step further with that in Dynamics NAV 2017. So we added support for the Dynamics add-in. And this was originally this is an add-in that was created by the Dynamics AX team, and we went through a lot of effort to update in Dynamics NAV our OData to OData v4 to support this add-in, and go through a lot of other work that enabled this functionality within Dynamics NAV. So we can connect from a blank spreadsheet, we can edit from a list in Excel, and it gives us that ability to publish data from this spreadsheet back into Excel. Let's go look at a few ways in which that can be used. First one I want to look at is sending data from a list out to Excel. If you have this functionality set up so that you have your authentication methods set up and you have the administration that we'll talk about in just a minute set up correctly, then rather than send to Excel or open in Excel, which would have been your other options in prior versions, we have Edit in Excel as the option on this button. When I hit this, it asks me if I want to open the spreadsheet from my customers list, and the add-in loads automatically from that view. And we see down at the bottom that it's updating the workbook and pulling that data. So all of this is what I was just looking at within that list in Dynamics NAV. If I select a field, one of the nice things about this add-in is that it recognizes the context of what I'm looking at. So it knows the data and it knows the properties of that data as well. That's all passed through as metadata in the OData connection between the application and the spreadsheet. So notice in the add-in at the top here, when I have focus on a specific field, it recognizes the source of where that data is coming from, and it also recognizes some of the properties of that field. So as I scroll across this, note that the field is changing at the top within the add-in because it's recognizing that context. The red, it turned red here because it recognizes which fields are writable and which ones are not writable. And balance, your year-to-date balance is not a field that you can write to because it's a calculated field. So it recognizes that if I tried to change this value and publish it back into NAV, it would give me an error message because it recognizes that data. As I scroll across some other information, if I select a date field, it gives me a date picker. If I have some drop-down lists, like a true-false or a Boolean, it gives me a true-false, and I can change the values from within the add-in. All that is recognized from within the metadata of that connection. So what does that give me? So I have a refreshable Excel spreadsheet. If I click refresh, if somebody's changing data in the back and somebody else is working with this, I can refresh it and it'll go get the absolute latest data pulled straight into my Excel spreadsheet. But I can also make changes straight from here and publish those back into NAV. So for example, I have the salesperson code and I want to change this and do a mass update to assign a salesperson to a group of customers. And I'm going to say AB and publish this, and I get an error message. And the reason for that is AB does not exist as a salesperson. So I can open my error messages. It says I tried to enter AB, but that doesn't exist in the related table. So it's understanding the context of this, trying to push in invalid data, and gives me an error message, so it won't let me do that. If I come back here and say, and then I can fill down so that I now have assigned a salesperson to all of these, and I publish. It'll analyze the changes, make sure that everything is correct, and it successfully wrote back 14 rows into my data. I can then go and look at Jim and see that PS is now assigned as that salesperson code. So gives us that ability to both pull data, work with that data. We then have the ability for all our data to be in Excel, have charts, graphs, functionality that's cool with Excel, and then be able to push that make any changes and push that back into Dynamics NAV. And all that is, all of the access to this data is controlled by your Dynamics NAV functionality. So if I didn't have access to that data in the table, it wouldn't let me pull it, wouldn't let me view it, wouldn't let me publish anything back into it. It's controlled by that Dynamics NAV security. A couple other ways that we can work with this data is, or create an Excel spreadsheet. We have that Edit in Excel button on any list page. So any page that is a type of list, a page of list type is going to have that Edit in Excel page. We're working on expanding that out. There are other pages where we see there's going to be value in adding this that are technically on the back end like worksheet pages or something that's not technically a list page. So if you see a page that looks like a list, but it doesn't have the Edit in Excel, it may be that it's technically on the back another list page that we're working on expanding out for future releases. But from those list pages, we have a couple other options for getting data into Excel. One is through our assisted setup wizard. That's setup reporting. And this lets us create a connection to any page or a query. So if I want to and I'll go through this pretty quickly because we're running close on time. I want to make sure there's time for questions. But if I select page 16, this will let me select the fields and add filters and basically set up the data connection to that data. Once I've have that selected all the fields that I want and I've added any filters that I want, I can publish that. It gives me an OData URL. This will show up in our web services page as a new published web service. And then I can click Excel, and that'll open that up in Excel, and I have that same functionality that I had in opening it straight from a list page. Additionally, I can open this add-in from a blank workbook or a blank page. If I were to just open straight workbook, I can open the Microsoft Dynamics Office add-in. It can be downloaded from the store, or it can be opened automatically from the client. But if you've used it, then or downloaded it, it'll show up in your add-ins. You can select Microsoft Dynamics Office add-in, and that will give it to you in Excel. And from here, I can design a query. So I add tables, and this will pull in the list of all of my data connections from my web services page. And we have a few default out of the box, but any additional ones that you create through that assisted setup wizard will also show up in this list, and you can then start working with it straight from a blank workbook in Excel. So that's a whirlwind of information on what we're doing with Outlook and bookings and Dynamics in Excel with Dynamics NAV. And we have not a lot of time left. I'm willing to stay a little bit longer if there's a lot of questions in there, but we can jump to questions.
Jared, there's a few questions out here. So the first one was regarding the job module.
Sure.
The question was, is it linked to sales order processing?
That's a good question. And Errol, you know Jody is the jobs master. I do. And she knows all the details of what happens on the back end with jobs. And my work was just to add that button that pushes job information to Outlook. So all the detailed questions on, actually let me put my email address here in the chat.
So while you're doing that, I don't know if you can multitask or not, but
there. So I mean, if you have questions on, I've just added that to the email address there. If you have questions on jobs and details on that, I can get those answers to you. Just shoot me an email and I can get those questions answered.
And probably a little more relevant one for what we just covered. There was a little bit of a query around sort of what happens if I'm about to refresh data in Excel and somebody else changes it sort of inside the app, and then I assume it's sort of last in.
Right, right. So if I make changes, all of that is validated when we're trying to push the data in. So if I'm working with a sheet in Excel and I try to push in or change a value that doesn't exist anymore, um, we have validations that work over that. But if somebody, for example, if while I was adding PS as the salesperson, somebody else had added already in Dynamics NAV a different salesperson, as soon as I publish, it will overwrite whatever is already in there.
Right.
So you can overwrite somebody else's work.
Similarly, what types of records can we load new using the Excel add-in?
There's a question on
customer GL accounts.
Yeah. It would be any list that you
new.
have. Yeah, you can create a new one. So that was one of the options in here. If I go back to my customer list, when I select here, I can say new, and it will give me a new row at the bottom. I have to give it an ID that's valid, but then the rest of this, I can put whatever I want as long as it's valid data that'll be published back in as a new record.
Right. So obviously sort of non-transactional kinds of things. In other words, customers, vendors, items.
It's mainly on those master records. We do have some list pages that are transactional. I believe we have some sales document headers that are list pages, but it's limited to that list page functionality. Anything that's a list, you will be able to push back in.
Yep. And how about, do you need Azure AD for the edit in Excel, or can you use just regular Active Directory?
It does need Azure Active Directory, yes. And actually, that was the one slide I had at the end. Administration, it's hosted in the store. You have to have web client. It's only available on the web client, and it requires Azure Active Directory. Your authentication method for logging into Dynamics NAV could be NAV user password still, but you have to have Azure Active Directory also set up to be able to authenticate the add-in.
And then is there a way to use the automatic number series when you're in Excel?
There isn't. No, that's a good question. That would be something where you could fill down. It's one of the cool things about Excel is you can fill down values. So if I had C00130 and then I put, oops.
You could have it to go by tens.
It'll automatically do that for you if you want to fill down. We don't automatically pull from the number series in.
That's just because you're inside of Excel, and that's a function of Excel.
Right.
How about the Outlook add-in with other languages? How does the add-in recognize documents?
Like the Italian version of Dynamics NAV?
Sure.
Yes, we also work with other languages. So it's going to surface whatever language you have loaded for your web client.
Right.
Additionally, the document, we also updated the document links add-in, the one that does a quick lookup of those documents to make sure that it's looking for additional languages or the language that you have installed for those document numbers. That's also looking at your number series to make sure that we're grabbing actual documents. So we did plan for additional languages as well.
Okay. There is a licensing question that I'm going to defer. So if you have licensing around the add-in, licensing questions around the add-in, I would suggest that you reach out to your local sales relationship to make sure that you're licensed correctly for that. So similarly, there was will it update last used in number series, which I think we conferred that it doesn't.
Right, right. It wouldn't update your last used in the number series. No.
Yep. And
that would be
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
something you'd have to
another
update afterwards.
another question around permissions. Are user permissions including special filters taken into consideration in the add-ins? Could it happen that some user through the add-in see more than he or she is supposed to?
A user would be able to see anything in the add-in that they have the ability to see within the web client. So all of those permissions are going to be the same. When you open the add-in, it authenticates you using the same user authentication that would be used to log into the web client. And from there, they'd have the same permissions. So if there's a field, piece of data, and any piece of functionality that they can see within the web client, they would also be able to see within the add-in. But those same restrictions apply. So if they don't have access to see something, they won't see it.
Yeah. Oh, I see. There's a qualifier on this number series thing that we got ourselves deep into. But so I assume it says, but is the last number updated in the number series? Which I assume what that means is so inside of NAV, if we import some stuff, is the last number that we track inside of NAV, is that in the number series? Does that make sense? Am I reading that correctly, Philippe? Philippe?
Well,
Yes. So, right.
It seems like a lot of people have questions on this. Let me just publish this quick and see what happens. I've added a whole bunch of new ones with blank customer names. Let's see how they show up in. So here are my new customers, all of them blank, and we want to see what happens in the number series.
Yeah. Look at this, real time.
Oh, hold on. I think it's no series.
Of course. Why would it be number? Hashtag if Earl can do it.
And we need
customer.
Last used was 130, which is not correct. So you're right. It does not update the number series.
Okay, there's real-time answer.
So that's something we can look at. But let's. Yep. So if I try to create a new one from the application, it's going to tell me I need to update my number series. So, yep. I'll. That'll be something, and until we can look at improving that functionality, then it would be something you just have to manually go into number series after doing a mass update like that.
Right. Okay. Which is sort of a one-time thing, right? I mean, that's not too bad.
I guess it would depend on the scenario that you're doing. If you're using Excel to create one record at a time, that could be an inconvenience.
Right.
I could see that.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I'm going to be looking for feedback over the next few months on how customers are using this, and see if that is something that's becoming an inconvenience. What are the other areas where we need to make these improvements? So that's good feedback. I appreciate those comments.
All right, so we're over time here, and so I think you mentioned, Jared, that you put your email address in there. So if people have some additional, more technical questions, feel free to reach out to you. And so, Jared, we'll hand it back over to you.
Jason.
Sorry, not Jared. Jason. Yeah. The other J.
All right, thanks, Errol. Well, thanks for handling all those questions for us, and thanks to everyone in the audience for your attention today. We did record today's event. Several people asked about that. We will be reaching out with information on how that can, how we'll be making that available. Thanks again for your feedback on the experience today, and we're also capturing all the questions, so in case there's any that that we want to get followed up on, we will be able to do that. Jared, Errol, thanks so much for joining us. Always fun to see stuff. All right, and with that, we'll conclude today's event. Have a great day, everybody.